a massive Holy Grail find 20 years ago in Puerto Rico. Hey, it's Mike. Thanks for tuning back in. So I think we can all agree there are a lot of different grails out there, like hobby grails. Not my grail. I know people think that my grails are lame and small, but hobby grails, you got the Wagner, you got the 52 Mantle, you have the Jordan rookie, whatever you consider to be the Jordan rookie. But then there's also the 1950-51 Toleteros Josh Gibson card, which is a massive grail for a lot of people. Most of us can't afford. I'll get into the pop reports in a little bit, but there are fewer than 100 that have been graded by the three big grading companies. So it's very rare. The biggest find came in Puerto Rico in 2003, and I'll tell you that story here. First of all, I am off work for a month. It is unbelievably exciting. I am giddy to be off work. I think tomorrow I'll post a video with what my plans are for the month of July in terms of this channel here and what I plan to do, the things I plan to roll out and do. I'm excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Today, though, an Attic Find Friday. I love Attic Find Friday. This is a really fun one. It's exciting because it's an insanely rare card that is in high demand, and especially high demand now because of the excitement over Josh Gibson. You know, the Negro League stats becoming integrated with Major League Baseball stats recently. Josh Gibson just became the #1 batting average holder in Major League Baseball in baseball history. His stats are staggering. He won 7 straight home run titles in the Negro Leagues in the 1930s and into the 40s, and a total of 11. And they don't have all of their stats from that era. They believe they have 80% or so of their stats. And a lot of people say, well, these don't count because they only played like 80 to 100 games a year. But you can't. How do you penalize somebody for something that he had no control over? We have somebody like the all-time ERA title is for a small number of games in a season. So I'm good with Josh Gibson being the all-time batting average holder. So Josh Gibson, his numbers look like Babe Ruth's. In Baseball Reference, there's just a lot of black ink. There's a lot of italic ink, meaning he led the league in a lot of stuff. All the good stuff. Home runs, RBIs, runs, batting average. Now what we know is on base percentage and slugging and OPS, which didn't exist back then, but they did exist technically because anybody could have calculated them at any time. There's been a lot of talk in recent weeks about his old-time Black Stars card from the 1970s, which is really his only card, his only vintage card that exists that is available to anybody. It's, you're going to pay hundreds of dollars for a copy of it now. It's shot up in price, up into the thousands, very, very quickly after this announcement. He got a lot of publicity. I'm assuming it's coming back down. I haven't looked. Doesn't really matter to me. But the big card from Josh Gibson is the 1950-51 Toleteros. Of course, we have to exclude his 1931 Harrison Studios postcard because even though that was in Playing Days, it's really his only Playing Days issue. The Toleteros is actually a Playing Days photograph from when he was playing on the Santurce team in Puerto Rico. So the person who found these, his name is Ryan Christoph of cardhoundvintage.com. And I'll share the link. I hope to remember to share the link in the description here. And I hope you go to it because I'm not telling the end of this story because there's a kind of a postscript that I think is really interesting that people will enjoy. So go and read this, give him your traffic, your clicks, and read the story and get to the end and see what I'm excluding from the story. Nothing that the whole story is told. So Ryan told the story in full just this year, a few weeks ago, as a matter of fact. But it happened in 2003, and he's told the story before too. There's some old forum posts from him. I found one from 2006 where he talked about all the hands that had passed through in sales just in the 3 years since he had found it and bought them. So he was in Puerto Rico looking for vintage Negro Leagues baseball items from Puerto Rico League in the 1930s through the 50s. He's a big baseball collector and Negro Leagues collector, so he wanted to find whatever he could find from that league. He was invited to view the largest Puerto Rican card collection, baseball collection of all, in what he says was the world at the time. He says that this person who owned this was not the most ethical of all sellers, had also allegedly counterfeited a ton of Roberto Clemente autographs over the years. And when Clemente's plane went down and Clemente died in the early 1970s, this guy, and I don't have the guy's name, Ryan didn't put it in the article, this guy hired a group of divers to go down and pull up pieces from the wreckage to sell to Clemente collectors. He actually offered a piece of the plane to Ryan, and Ryan refused. And then he ended up consigning it to Leland's and other pieces of the plane to Leland's auction house in 2005. There was an outcry, and Leland's ended up canceling the auction, removing these items from their auction. So good on Leland's, I guess. Although you could argue, should they have had those in the first place? Should they have agreed to consign them? I guess take some risks. Publicity doesn't hurt, even if it's negative. So Ryan told this guy that he was interested in baseball cards and photos and magazines. So the guy brought out a handful of albums, a bunch of albums of cards. They were all Toleteros cards from 1948 through 51. And Ryan starts leafing through them. He starts out, they're all complete sets of Toleteros. Ryan's very excited. He's only seen a few examples of these cards. Since then, he has actually added the complete sets to the checklists in the standard catalog of baseball cards. So as he's leafing through the albums, he says, Josh Gibson didn't have any cards, right? Because Josh Gibson didn't have any cards at this point, 2003. And the guy says, nope, no Josh Gibson cards. So then he gets to the last 4 albums, all of which are 1950 to 51. He's leafing through. He turned a page, bam, there was Josh Gibson. And in this picture, you can see the album. And in the middle, the only one swinging a bat, if I remember correctly, is Josh Gibson. And Ryan is shocked, but he doesn't want to let the guy know what he has. So he keeps leafing through. And he says, normally he would tell the owner what they have. You want to build relationships, you want to have a good reputation. Except he felt like this guy wouldn't have done the same thing, and apparently it sounds like he didn't deserve it. And so I'm curious to know from you, what would you do in this situation? Would you tell the guy what he had? Or would you let it go? In my opinion, if Ryan said, Josh Gibson didn't have any cards, right? And this guy said no, this guy should know what he has. Has the biggest Puerto Rican collection, has all these Negro Leagues cards, doesn't know that he has Josh Gibson's in there. Ryan kept flipping, and he found 1 in each album and 2 in another album. So now he has 5 in the 4 albums. One of them was taped on top of another. So he asked the gentleman for his price. The guy gave him an outrageous price, probably thinking that they would negotiate or Ryan would be offended and not buy it. But Ryan said, yep, okay, I agree. Bought immediately. Didn't negotiate, just knew having 5 Josh Gibsons in there made it well worth it. So Ryan doesn't share what he sold it for, these 5 cards. He did say that over the next 3 years, they changed hands quite a few times. They were sold in 2006 in an REA auction. At least one of them was. But he doesn't own any of them. He sold all 5 of them. I think I would sell 4, and I would keep probably the lowest graded item. The lowest, but also good looking one. I think they all looked pretty darn good. He also didn't say if he graded any of them. But I assume they've all been graded by now. Pop reports look like this. 14 in PSA, with an 8 being the highest. 19 with SGC, also with an 8 looking the highest. So that's 33, and I think there were 2 with BGS as well. I didn't look up those details. But maybe 35 to 40 that have been graded. pretty amazing. And they had never existed before. Nobody knew these cards existed. Obviously somebody did because they're in somebody's collection, but even the guy who owned 5 of them didn't realize what he had. And they became huge, as you can tell. I mean, they were selling for tens of thousands right away. The last one that sold publicly that I was able to find was a PSA 4 that sold in 2021 for $104,000. So if one of those were to come up now with all the hubbub, we should say hubbub more, I think, with all the hubbub around Josh Gibson and the Negro Leagues, how much would an 8 sell for now? Would it go into the millions? I don't know. I think it might. It would be pretty darn exciting. So what do you think about this story? What would you do if you were him leafing through that binder and then you see Josh Gibson when you didn't expect to and you were told you wouldn't? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe too. I'll share some more. I've got a lot coming up in July. I'm really excited about it. I hope you are too. The National is less than a month away. I'll be there. I'll be at the YouTube get-together. And make sure you go to cardhoundvintage.com to read the rest of the story. I found it pretty interesting. I'll also share it in my newsletter on Monday. But it's in the description to this video, I hope. All right, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great weekend.